Hello everyone, I do hope that you're all well. This is the Introverted Astrologer, and today I'm bringing you a look at our Princess Catherine. As I'm sure you're aware, she has had a very difficult health year, following the discovery of precancerous cells at the beginning of 2024. I last looked at her chart about half a year ago, and I'd thought that this lady would pull through. And indeed, just a couple of weeks ago, she carried out her first officially recorded work engagement since her treatment began. And she's also recently been spotted attending church with the King and the Queen Consort. She's explained that the path to healing and full recovery is long, and that she will take each day as it comes. And so today, we're going to look at her year ahead. How does 2025 pan out for the princess? Will those health concerns die down? We've also picked up that a very malefic fixed star, Algol, is featuring prominently in the charts of the King and the Queen Consort for this coming year. Are the heavens going to give Princess Catherine a break, or is she going to be affected too? Let's start this off by looking at the princess's solar return for 2025. She turns 43 on the 9th of January 2025. And so this chart is showing us the exact moment that her natal sun returned to the precise degree and minute it was in at her birth. And this chart here gives us a snapshot of the main themes for 2025. Some of the things that we can consider when we look at a standalone solar return chart include the sign on the ascendant, whether there are any exact or very close aspects, and indeed if we have any planets on angles. In this case, the ascendant is in Sagittarius, and this correlates with the sign on the cusp of the princess's 5th house. The 5th house is joyful, it's expressive and creative. It's about our children and our self-expression, and it has a dramatic and fun feeling to it. This really is an excellent start for the princess. Last year, at the start of 2024, she had Capricorn on her solar return ascendant, and Capricorn is the sign on the cusp of her 6th house, the house of health and duty, of daily routines. The 6th house is also known for being slightly more difficult, and indeed 2024 was a difficult year for the princess. Perhaps with this Sagittarius ascendant she has something easier coming this year. Let's carry on breaking this chart down. We can see that benefic Jupiter is the chart ruler because it rules the sign of Sagittarius, and Jupiter is also on an angle, strengthening it considerably. And so happiness, growth, the enlarging of our mindset is likely to be improved through our formal and one-to-one relationships, including our marriage. Where we find Jupiter is where we thrive and grow. We can also see that the sun here and the moon are in an almost exact trine to each other. It's within 1 degree of orb. Moreover, that moon is very happy in the sign of Taurus, where it is said to be exalted. We can consider the relationship between the sun and the moon when we look at a solar return. We can weigh up what position they are in the overall lunation cycle. And so this easier flowing aspect corresponds with the waxing gibbous phase of the lunation cycle, and it's suggesting more harmony and confidence for the princess in 2025. She will likely feel more optimistic, and the things that she aims for may seem to come more easily. Her emotions and her conscious will or direction are both in synchronicity. There are a couple of other positive indications in this chart, and one of them is this Mercury, which is at around a degree of Capricorn. Very early and very late degrees of a sign are important, particularly if they are showing that a planet is just entering or leaving a sign which is noteworthy for some reason. And we can see that this Mercury at 1 odd degrees has very recently left the sign of Sagittarius. Now Mercury is said to be in detriment in Sagittarius, and so the fact that Mercury has moved out of a sign of its detriment and is just entering fresh territory is important, and it's implying that the princess's mental faculties and the areas of her life which involve communication, learning, getting out and about, our short journeys in our locality and our interactions with the people around us, these are all going to be easier for her this year. As a matter of fact, the solar return for 2024 had shown Mercury in Sagittarius in its detriment and exactly square Neptune, so clearly a sign of more difficult times. But back to 2025, we have another sign that things will be improving. We can also see that this Venus here is in the sign of Pisces, where it is said to be in exaltation. And so this is another very promising sign of ease and harmony in her relationships. And it also bodes well for her relationship with Prince William, despite all those dreadful videos that will try to persuade the public otherwise. I don't see that their relationship is on rocky grounds. Now there are a couple of things which are less easy, so we'll flag those up now. The first concern is the Sun with its exact square to Chiron. Chiron, this very sensitive asteroid, can show where we are wounded and hurt. And in square to the Sun, it may indeed be showing us that the hurt is a physical one. In other words, an illness or a malady of some kind. And so it might be that the princess needs to make accommodation this year for wounds to her physical health. Her official statement was that her path to healing and full recovery was long, and that she must continue to take each day as it comes. And seeing this very tight aspect in her chart, I would agree, health will still cast some shadow on this year, but it won't bring the princess to her knees. I had thrown in a couple of the health-related asteroids, including Hygeia, Apollo and Asclepius. And while they don't appear on an angle, we can see that Apollo is pulled into this Sun, Moon, Chiron pattern. And so I think it's possible that low physical energy is going to play a part this year. The princess will need to make some adjustments for this lowered vitality. If we also look at Mars, we can see that this planet too is in a late degree because it's almost at 29 degrees of Cancer. Mars is said to be in its fall in the sign of Cancer because it's basically unhappy in such an emotional sign which is orientated towards safety and nurturing. And this return Mars is also retrograde, which is another sign of diminished power. And lastly, it's in the 8th house, whether we are Placidus or whole sign, and the 8th house does have some unfortunate connotations. If we add all these things together, we can appreciate this planet is in a pretty poor condition. And if we consider that it represents the princess's action and her energy this year, her ability to get out there and get what we want, then we can anticipate from this return that this part of the princess's expression is going to be weaker this year. Of course, we would never look at the solar return just on its own, so let's take a closer look at how this return relates to the princess's natal chart. The chart in the centre is the princess's natal chart, and around the outer edge in green glyphs are those solar return planets that we've just been looking at. Can we see any significant conjunctions or interplay between the charts? We can see that the solar return midheaven falls on Princess Catherine's natal Mars, and so those Martian themes are going to be prominent this year. She will try to direct a lot of her energy outwards towards her public role, how society sees her, Her urge will be to express her actions out there on the wider public stage. Other close aspects include the solar return moon falling on Princess Catherine's natal Chiron, and these two will also be square to her ascendant. The moon can say something about our emotions, and sometimes it can represent our mother or a mother figure. Sometimes it relates to our family concerns, but the suggestion is that some kind of emotional wounding will be keenly felt this year. We might be more emotionally tender than usual, and it may be that a mother figure is a source of pain or grief for us this year. Let's step back in time and see if we can find out a little bit more by looking at the Converse solar return. Princess Catherine turns 43 this January in 2025, and so if we cast a chart 43 years before she was born, we can look at this return for any repeating themes or the prominence of particular planets. And this particular return is showing the sun on the ascendant. And once again we have that flowing aspect between the sun and the moon. And when we have the sun on the ascendant, we are shining out with all of our solar vibrance and projecting ourselves out onto the world. There may still be some health concerns because the moon is in the sign of Virgo, and there can be health concerns with this background energy. So we know that the princess will have to take it easy still and have a graduated approach to taking up royal duties again. Now we can see that Algol is on the IC of this chart, opposite the midheaven, and the IC can represent roots, heritage or family, and Algol is prominent here. Is this telling us something about family? Perhaps even parents or our roots? We can also view the moon as being symbolic of home and family, because we usually associate the moon with the fourth house and the sign of Cancer. Neptune is on the moon in this chart, potentially hinting at some confusion or some oversensitivity in this area. As before, if we transpose those solar return planets onto the princess's natal chart, which is in the centre, then we can see that the sixth house of health and duty is being brought to prominence by that ascendant. However, because we also have the sun on the ascendant, this is allaying some of the health concerns that I would otherwise have, because this is an aspect which is promising visibility of radiance and vitality. This solar return Mars is actually opposing Princess Catherine's natal Chiron within just a few minutes. It's virtually exact. So this is definitely showing us again that there is some wounding to her energy levels, to her ability to undertake lots of activity. But I do feel somewhat reassured by the lack of close contact from a couple of the other return health asteroids, Asclepius and Hygeia, to the princess's natal planets and her angles. I think we really will have to take it as stated that the princess will be taking it one day at a time and putting her own health first. I think there will be a desire to re-engage with some of her public duties and express herself out in the world. But let's take a look at her progressions and see if we can pick anything up from these. Now basically, progressions is a common forecasting method that astrologers use to forecast upcoming astrological weather. And using this method, we move all the planets one day forward in our ephemeris for every 1 year of life that a person has lived. The princess will turn 43 at the beginning of January 2025, and so we have moved roughly 43 days forward in our ephemeris, and these planets are placed around the outside of the chart in green. The inner chart is the princess's natal chart. And what we had previously identified in the princess's natal chart is that she was born under a lunar eclipse, which means that the sun and the moon are opposite each other. We can also see in her natal chart that her Mars is in a wide square with this sun-moon axis. And what had happened over time is that this Mars had progressed forward very slowly over the years until it reached a position where it was forming an exact square with her Sun. Now, as at 1st of October 2024, this progressed Mars is around 19 degrees and 11 of Libra. And so it is just 1 minute short of being in an exact square with the Sun still. However, we can see that this Mars has turned retrograde, which means that it is now appearing to move backwards as viewed from our Earth perspective. And the point at which this Mars appeared to move backwards coincided exactly with January 2024, when Mars reached 19 degrees and 11 of Libra, precisely squaring this Sun. And at the time of the princess's abdominal surgery, Mars then appeared to turn retrograde. The synchronicities in astrology are beautiful. And so the position we're now in is that this progressed Mars will continue to very, very slowly reverse backwards over the next 80-odd progressed years. And as it's a physical impossibility at present for Princess Catherine to live for another 80 plus years, we know that this Mars will not form this aspect with her Sun again. Now, I have been able to tell that another one of her progressed planets is going to change direction in the progressions in the not too far away future. And this is her progressed Jupiter. It will turn retrograde in June of 2027. And so 2027 is going to be a very important year for the princess. Is it just a coincidence that this will also be the year when the king and the queen consort have major change? We'll certainly look closer at that in time. But back to the present, can we see any other significant changes coming? Her Sun, by progression, has now moved to early Pisces, and it is shortly going to square her natal Uranus. This is significant because aspects to the progressed Sun are, but also because there exists a mild minor aspect between her natal Sun and her Uranus. They are in a semi-square, approximately 45 degrees apart. And so when the progressed Sun squares that natal Uranus, it will be perfecting something of the natal promise. So the implication is that there is some kind of change coming, some kind of tension. It could possibly be a bit upsetting, as we might need to suddenly adjust to a change in our life circumstances. This aspect becomes exact around April, May of 2025. So a couple of months either side of that date may tell us a bit more about what this sudden change in self-expression involves. Now, we can also see from the position of the progressed moon here and the progressed Sun that they are not too far apart from each other at the moment, and the moon will gradually close that gap. From the distance between the moon and the Sun, we know that the princess is in that part of the lunation cycle which we call the progressed balsamic phase. This means that the moon is drawing closer and closer to the Sun, and ultimately, in the not too distant future, it will exactly conjunct the Sun, and we will then have a progressed new moon. When that new moon happens, it heralds the start of a whole major new life cycle, and it's very important. The princess's progressed new moon won't become exact until, can you guess? It's that year again, 2027. This keeps cropping up as being an extremely important year for key players in the royal family. As the progressed moon makes that journey towards the sun, the princess may find that things in her life change. This is because the soul is reorientating itself at the new moon, and we may have to lose or change some of the things in our life that we take for granted. This can include states of health, but many other things may change between now and the new moon to create the space that is needed before the next major life cycle begins. So this can be a changeful few years in our life. It isn't too long since King Charles had his progressed new moon, which was earlier in 2024. And in those final couple of years before the new moon, he too underwent significant changes in preparation for the new cycle. And so he lost his mother, the Queen. There were troubling family dynamics and the exodus of Harry from his role as a working royal. There were also health changes. These can be intense years penultimate to this new moon. Now, another important progression that will happen in the near future for the princess is that her progressed Venus is in late Capricorn. It is moving very slowly at the moment, but it will soon exactly square her natal Pluto. I've calculated that this important progression will become exact, can you guess? Yes, in 2027. Now, if we return to this progressed moon, its position as it goes round the chart at roughly a degree a month tells us a lot about the flavour of the princess's life as we move through her year ahead. For a start, we know that because the moon is currently in Aquarius and working its way through her 7th whole sign house, certain things are setting the background theme at the moment. So the focus is very much on her formal alliances, her one-to-one relationships, including her marriage. And the background energy is very pro-society, very intent on working together with other people. And this is a time when we're interested in movements or organisations which are concerned with the betterment of humanity, with making that positive difference. And we're able to view these things in a detached and balanced way. Our goals are humane and we thrive on contact with similar groups around us, with our friends and our friendship circles. And one of the first things we can pick up is that this progressed moon will conjunct her natal Mercury at some point in November of 2024. And at this time, communication, learning, mental activity, getting stuck in and learning new things, and interacting in our neighbourhood and with the people immediately around us, these are all pivotal. And as we then approach December of 2024, this progressed moon will go on to conjunct her natal Venus, and it will simultaneously square that natal Jupiter. And I think this is a marvellous aspect to have over the Christmas period, because the emphasis will then shift onto highly sociable and entertaining weeks, with an emphasis on pleasurable activities and outings. In fact, under Moon Venus, some people fall in love, and the princess's focus will also be on her relationship with those that she loves. This square to Jupiter is implying that there could be some excess involved in this. Us ordinary folk would have to look after our money carefully because we would be inclined to impulsive mistakes that we couldn't afford. So there is that need to guard against excess here and to not overextend ourselves beyond our physical and financial resources. Come March time, that progressed moon will trine her natal Mars, and so this is a time of intense energy, deep passion, a dynamic drive to follow the things that we're interested in achieving. It would just be important during this time of intense energy and drive But we were not too impatient with the people around us, because our own motives will be for decisive actions at speed. As the princess moves further into 2025, this progressed moon will begin to square her natal Chiron, and these few weeks may be a little more tricky. We'll feel out of odds with the world. Emotionally, we will be super tender, weepy even, and our physical vitality will be lower, so we'll be prone to catching bugs or feeling under the weather. Do we have any significant solar arc directions becoming exact during 2025? Solar arc directions are a method of forecasting by moving all planets and points in the chart forward by roughly 1 degree for every year of life, and this means that even the slower outermost planets will move 1 degree per year. These solar arc positions are placed around the outer edge in blue, and we can see that the solar arc moon will square the princess's natal Uranus. Exactitude is around November of 2025, but we can't always be sure when the energy of this connection will manifest. And Uranus to moon is implying short, sharp, emotional shocks or disruptions. Uranus and the moon don't work very easily with each other, and so we need to keep an eye on this. In fact, we can see that solar arc Uranus is going to conjunct the princess's natal sun-moon axis at some point in the not too distant future. And I think you know which year I'm going to say it becomes exact. Yes, it is indeed 2027. Now, if we take a look at the transits that are happening around this time in Princess Catherine's life, then we can see how the heavens are affecting her at the moment. Now, we're currently in eclipse season, and we know that there is going to be a solar eclipse on the 2nd of October, and this eclipse will fall at roughly 10 degrees of Libra. This means that it will be conjunct the princess's natal Mars, and it also falls on quite a sensitive part of the King's chart and the Queen Consort's chart, and on one of Prince William's personal planets. We can't always be sure that an eclipse will manifest if it isn't visible, and this upcoming solar eclipse isn't visible in the UK. Nonetheless, the princess is an eclipse person, born under an eclipse, and is part of the elite of a country, similar to a country's rulers. These figures tend to be more powerfully impacted by eclipse energy. This particular eclipse is associated with beginnings and endings. There's a kind of sad undertone to it, and a great tiredness or low physical energy. Now, there is also an eclipse in 2025, and this one is visible in the UK, and it will take place at around 9 degrees of Aries, and so it's very closely opposite the princess's natal Mars. This particular eclipse energy will be concerned with the expenditure of great physical energy. This could be expressed positively in terms of, for example, taking up a physical activity which is exhilarating and through which we can expend great force and energy. Alternatively, though, there is also the potential for this to manifest as an accident, and so we'd need to be careful around this time if the eclipse impacted our own chart. The key theme is that expression of strong, big energy, and there's an underlying caution to take sensible precautions to protect yourself. What kind of transits will the princess be experiencing during 2025? We know that part of her health journey in 2024 involved this transiting Chiron, which simultaneously squared her sun, her moon, opposing her natal Saturn. We know that this important little asteroid can figure prominently during health crises too. Well, Chiron will make its last exact contact with her sun and moon in January of 2025, and the final opposition to her natal Saturn will be in March of 2025, and Chiron will not contact these points exactly again. But it won't disappear because it will move on to begin opposing her natal Pluto. And this is something that will first unfold around June, July of 2025. And it will be an ongoing transit even into 2026. It won't be a major transit per se, but it will certainly be an irritation. And it will be prompting the princess to have a closer look at her insecurities and the wounds that she has built up over her life. Because Pluto can also represent how we take control and power. Chiron will also be prompting her to look at where she tries to control things in her life. Now, transiting Saturn has been active in the princess's life during 2024. And I think it's part of the reason why the princess has been able to focus so calmly and clearly on her health and to knuckle down to the chemotherapy regime, which we know can be so difficult on our physical bodies. This Saturn has been in her 8th whole sign house, and it has formed a sextile aspect with her Sun and a trine aspect with her Moon. Saturn can bring the benefits of structure, of self-discipline, and these are things which we sometimes need in life. Saturn can particularly help us to cut out the dead wood and to focus hard on what is really important. Now, Saturn is going to move away from this Sun-Moon axis over the course of February of 2025. It will move on to form a square aspect with her natal Neptune, and the initial contact of this will be around April 2025. And it will be an ongoing transit because Saturn will retrograde over this position again, even into December, the end of the year. Because Saturn is a planet that loves structure, when it meets with Neptune, well, Neptune erodes, it dissolves, it can disorientate and confuse us. And so confidence levels may drop slightly at this time as we find ourselves questioning the things around us and feeling somewhat uncertain. Our confidence may be low and we could feel pessimistic and discouraged. Saturn also represents our physical structure, our body, and so this contact with Neptune can sometimes flag up health issues and remind us to maintain a healthy physical regime. Transiting Pluto will continue forming a sextile aspect with the princess's natal Uranus. I would see this as being a milder background influence because it is between two outer planets and is something that will play out over a longer period. It basically suggests that we will see opportunities to instigate changes in our life pattern, ways of bringing in reforms which will possibly be for the betterment of society. So social reforms that we could introduce would be very interesting to us under this influence. And certainly we may have fresh insights into what reforms would be desirable. Another ongoing transit that will be taking place between outer planets involves Neptune, which will begin to trine the princess's natal Uranus in 2025, and it will be ongoing for a couple of years. This too is another eye-opening transit which could gently expose us to the underlying depths in the universe, to greater, bigger truths to our existence here on Earth. Our consciousness could well be expanded under this transit. Our intuition will be deeper, and this would be an excellent time for exploring new methods of understanding the world, its place in the universe, and how things work. So picking up astrology, for example, or exploring deeper psychic truths would be favoured under this energy. And we may also choose to work towards Uranian reforms in society which are beneficial to mankind and highly charitable in nature. Jupiter is currently in Gemini, which equates to the princess's 11th whole sign house. But as we move into 2025, by June, Jupiter will have reached the position of the princess's natal moon. It will also be in her 12th whole sign house. Jupiter will make a simultaneous opposition to her Sun and a square to her Saturn. And these will all be ongoing transits because Jupiter will retrograde over all these positions in early 2026. Now, when Jupiter is in the 12th house, it still has a beneficial impact. The 12th house refers to things which are hidden. It can be a very spiritual house, and Jupiter here can heighten our compassion for others and deepen our spiritual understandings. We are seeing that the princess is having some transits during 2025 which are very much orientated towards deeper perception of life, towards spiritual growth. Jupiter on the moon can also make us very generous and optimistic with our emotions. We might love spending time with our family and nurturing the people around us. Sometimes a teacher may appear in our lives, somebody who is able to deepen our understanding of metaphysical things. The simultaneous opposition to her Sun can also be very beneficial for her growth, provided that the goals she pursues are more spiritual in nature than they are material. With this square to Saturn, there may be some feelings of restlessness and uncertainty. Transits by square tend to spur us into a feeling that we need to take action. Jupiter urges us to enlarge, and yet Saturn can bring in the brakes. So we will have this urge to expand and grow, and a simultaneous feeling of banging up against uncertainty and limitations. In practice, we will probably cut out some things from our life under this transit, things which are actually not any good for us. Our decision making will need to be more discriminating because we can act on new opportunities, but we need to be very choosy about what we bring in. Benefits under this transit are more likely if we focus on things which will enlarge our growth and be mind expanding. Jupiter's position in the 12th house will probably be inclining the princess to bring in changes which are more spiritual in nature. I don't see that the princess is going to have a dreadfully difficult year. There will be some problems in it, but there'll be a great deal of positivity for this lady too. I'm personally intrigued with all these pointers towards 2027 being a pivotal year for key players in the royal family. We've already seen this as we've taken a look at the King's chart, the Queen Consort's chart, and now we can see those signs in Princess Catherine's chart too. So I'll keep my eyes peeled when we take a look at Prince William. My next video is going to take a look at the British Prime Minister, Keir Starmer. There is mounting public displeasure since he took office and accusations of him visiting austerity Mark II on the British population. I'm also going to bring some royal synastry videos shortly too, and so do keep an eye on my channel if you're interested. In the meantime, take good care of yourselves and God bless you and your families. Thank you for watching.